Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever.
Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my head practitioner and co-host, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. As always, can't wait for today's topic.
Yeah, and it's so funny. The client I just had right before we started just had surgery like 2 weeks ago. And so we were talking about some of the things that we're about to talk about here. So yeah, super relevant. So today's episode, obviously you've probably already seen the name here, but we're talking all about surgery. And, really, once again, as with, some of the other previous episodes, this is going to be a little bit more like cross-reference with the medical field. And so, just want to put a blanket disclosure out there. Always listen to your doctor, always consult with your doctor before you decide or not decide on a surgery and or on any medications or switching anything up. Always consult with the doctor. This is meant as general things to think about, education, give you some resources and maybe some questions to ask and things to think about. So just, make sure to always consult with your doctor. All of us are different, every person, every body, and it's always changing. So just always keep that in mind here. So, so today we're going to largely talk about if you do have to have surgery, what are some things that we can do to help prepare the body beforehand and also afterwards? And Shannon, this is not actually on our notes, but this was relevant because this came up with someone else here pretty recently. I did want to talk maybe a little bit first on surgical options. And, some things aren't necessarily surgery is an option. And is it, just thinking about, is it the best option? And the one thing that really comes to mind for me is with the gallbladder. Do we take out the gallbladder? Do we leave in the gallbladder? And I will say we've saved a gallbladder or two in our days here. And so that's a big one. Obviously, we think about bigger surgeries like you've got to get a thing removed that's really attacking your body. If you're cut open and you need surgery to repair something, things like that, which are usually emergent, 100% necessary. There's no real alternatives. And with some of these things, gallbladder surgery, hit or miss depending on the person. So we can talk about that. The other one that's really I've worked a lot with is bariatric type surgeries, weight loss surgeries. So I would like to chat a little bit about those maybe before we get into how do we prep and post care when it comes to surgeries.
Yeah, for sure. And just to add to that list too, tonsils is another one, especially if you're someone who gets strep throat all the time, because that's a big one. And I've even seen acute, or I'll say acute here, lymph nodes, mostly with younger people being sick, and sometimes same thing with the gallbladder. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. We're in the ER, and then we're not educated about how all of this works, and someone suggests to us you need to get this removed right now. And if you don't know that there's other options and it's not life-threatening, that's very important here. If it's life-threatening, that's a different story. But to be aware of these other options and that there's things that we can do to maybe save these parts of the body, because, we're born with them. There's a purpose for them. There's a function for them. Oftentimes we lose out on naturally protecting and healing our body when we're missing these pieces. So yeah, I think that's a great thing to add to this.
Yeah. And, with the bariatric surgeries, and I just thought of another one here that I'm going to throw in, and we could probably do a whole episode on that, this other one coming up here, but we will. Yes. But I do want to touch on it. With the gallbladder, And I just met with someone here pretty recently, and they took his gallbladder out, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, we actually did not need to do that." And yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah, and so that's like a real big one. If you're having like really severe gallbladder attacks, like this is a different story versus like, hey, you've got a bunch of chronic issues going on. Your gallbladder looks maybe a little bit inflamed. Like, let's just try and take it out. Like, your gallbladder is really important, just like by the way. And like anytime you're changing anything with your anatomy, and once again, I'm thinking like these bariatric surgeries, like I've worked with, dozens and dozens of patients, both like as a personal trainer and in the holistic health field. And I can tell you that I've had one person successful after 5 years. And everyone else I've ever talked to, and once again, like we're not talking a couple cases here. We're talking quite a significant amount of cases that either it's reversed, it fails, and there's a lot of complications that can come along with this. And anytime you change your anatomy, once again, like we firmly believe, and I'm throwing the appendix in here too, of like, if we're born with an organ, it has a purpose. In which case, like, maybe let's, if we can, try and do some other things to save organs and our anatomy, our natural anatomy, before we just kind of willy-nilly go kind of take these out. And so, the gallbladder thing is really specific to the person. I will say, like, two of the products that are really beneficial when it comes to like saving gallbladders, Tudca, man, is that such a good one. We often have used kale support and Tudca from Cellcore before with a lot of success, while also looking at the bigger root causes as to why and how the gallbladder is being impacted here. The other one I did want to mention, we'll say, and I'll kind of like throw in general here, cosmetic surgeries. I get it. And at the same time, there's a lot of things that can go wrong here. And I'll say the biggest one that we probably often see go wrong is breast implants. And and if you look at most people, I know like there's a big name in the holistic health space. She recently got hers out. And for me, it's mind blowing that she waited this long with all of her health issues that she is still experiencing. And I have some thoughts on her anyways. I like a lot of her stuff. I also don't like a lot of her stuff, just throwing that out there. Man, do we have so many people that come to us with having had breast implants that there's limitations on what we can do because there are a lot of toxins being leached out of that. And I honestly don't even know. We've had people come to us from all kinds of different kinds of breast implants. I've never seen a good one, if I'm being really honest. So that's something to think about. And, obviously it's a very personal choice. And one of the things that we always talk about is like, okay, if you don't feel comfortable in your body, maybe we should look into some of the trauma stuff and like, where is this coming from? Maybe there's some work to do on that end of the spectrum versus, changing some things on the more physical side.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all of these things besides the cosmetic surgery, usually, there's a root issue going on underneath it, like just the tonsils, for example. Very common to see like viral issues, other toxicities overloaded happening in the body. And that's why like we keep getting sick over and over and over again. So oftentimes like there's just something else that needs to be addressed, not necessarily completely removed from the body, in order to get things functioning right again. And then yes, with the cosmetic surgery, I don't think I know one single person who didn't end up having to get their implants removed. Well, maybe a couple people I can think of who have chronic health issues at this point. Like I don't know a person in a healthy body who has had like breast implants, for example. And we have to remember when we're undergoing surgery, which we're going to talk about throughout this podcast, we're also being exposed to, heavy metals, other toxins through, over-the-counter medication, even as simple as like dyes and stuff. during these surgery processes, which some of them we can't avoid, they have to be done. And that's the point of like us talking about some of this prep and what to do after, is to make sure those things aren't building in the body and we're not making anything worse.
Yeah. And, the other piece that often goes into this, I'll say this isn't always, but oftentimes, we'll see a lot of testing needing to be done before a surgery, whether that's an MRI, a CT, using either one of those with contrast and the dyes and different chemicals that are put in the body. And I think it's really important, once again, like not saying like don't do these things, just let's be aware of what we're really doing for our body and understanding the impact of that, so that we can make sure that long term our body is supported and can work through and get some of these things out. And we're also digging deeper into the bigger root causes. So yeah, I think the one thing that I just don't think is very common knowledge, and certainly I've never heard a physician mention this. If you go under general anesthesia, the amount of heavy metals in general anesthesia is crazy high. Just like, so there's so many heavy metals in general anesthesia. And once again, like, not saying do or don't, some of these things are absolutely necessary and can be very life-saving. And once again, like, no physician that I know of or ever talked to or have heard from a third party from, a client that we work with is being like, hey, by the way, we're going under general anesthesia. General anesthesia has a bunch of heavy metals in it. So you may want to think about, going through and making sure you're drinking enough water and supporting your liver and, bowel movements and constipation after surgery is like a huge thing. And so, just like thinking about all of these things from a holistic perspective. And once again, if we go back to like any of the testing and the radiation that can come along with that and, the dyes and the contrast and, all that kind of stuff. My partner just had CT with contrast, and the only thing they told him was make sure to drink plenty of water to help get this out of your body. And I was,
biting your tongue.
Yeah, just laughing and biting my tongue, and trying not just be like, it is what it is, let it go, whatever. So just really, they just don't know. And that's the thing, like they just don't know. Western medicine doesn't teach these things. So this is where a lot of the holistic side can really be helpful and beneficial in helping support the body from a more natural perspective.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this is like these two things can be meshed together, because sometimes like we have to have surgery for something. I mean, I've had 2 foot surgeries throughout my life. No one warned me about all the heavy metals in the general anesthesia that I was going under. So I've had a decent amount of exposure to that, as many people have. But yeah, again, that's the great thing is like you can utilize some of the stuff that we're going to talk about if you do have to have a procedure done. And I will say the first and probably one of the biggest things that you can do, which we talk about all the time, is going to be supporting your liver. So that comes in so many different ways. You can use castor oil packs. Those are great. You can use Epsom salt baths. Those are just great all the time, honestly, and help with stress support. You can dry brush. If you have a rebounder, you could do that. There's different like at home drainage videos you can do to help support like your lymph nodes draining. If you're a person who is into coffee enemas, that's another great option to support your liver. But really adding this in some form. And if you're just starting out, something like Epsom salt baths and dry brushing are 2 really easy things to start to incorporate. In the purpose of this is because we know we're being exposed to toxins. We want to support the liver, which is our biggest detox organ, to make sure all of this stuff can get filtered out properly and we're not being left with some overload and imbalance in the body.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, honestly, like one of the best things you can do, support the liver naturally, supplement wise, there's lots of supplements out there. We're going to talk through some specific ones that we often use when we support someone going through surgery. I think the other thing to understand is, when we look at bigger root causes here, liver does so much. And we also need to understand that surgery is stressful on the body. You know, like I don't think I know anyone who goes into a surgery being like, this is great. I love surgery. I am not nervous. Like, there's often, even if it's a really simple procedure, there's usually some stress that comes with this. And, like, even with simple procedures, like things can go wrong. And so, looking at stress support, how can we, focus on our nervous system, helping our body feel safe? Like, and this is not like, let's not stress about it. It's how can we support, feel all of our feelings, stress, sadness, fear, anything else coming up, for you, and how do we support the nervous system? And once again, this doesn't have to be like crazy big, but, meditation, breath work, somatic movements, journaling, sitting in silence, like anything like that is just always going to be very supportive going into any sort of stressful situation. And surgery is no exception here for sure.
Yeah, surgery. I mean, just the setting of like a hospital or a doctor's office, that alone tends to have not the best energy all the time because it's a place where things are happening, people are healing things and whatever. So yeah, there's I don't think I've known anyone who's gone into like a surgery feeling happy and excited. So most often people are scared because it is a scary thing. So adding something like this in can be really helpful. And again, if you're not used to doing this at all, you can start with like listening to, there's something called binaural beats. You can find it on YouTube or Spotify, like just some calming music, anything that you like, maybe doing like a minute or two of breath work, just actually working on actively noticing what you're feeling and trying to process it instead of like shoving it down, because then we can have other issues from that.
Exactly. And, when we have to have surgery, typically our body's in a stressed state of some sort because usually something's going wrong. Let's say outside of cosmetic surgery, maybe not necessarily. Yes. I am going to throw bariatric surgery in here because that's a little bit different, a little bit more complicated. There's an inflammatory piece of this. When we think about stress, once again, total stress overall, there's something something off in our body. And when we think like more bariatric surgery, there can be a lot of bigger root causes here. I think another really important piece is the emotional connection to food and nutrition and what does that look like. And so looking at nutritional support, anything that's going to be on the more anti-inflammatory side, helping reduce stress inside the body. And I think that's from like an inflammation standpoint, if we can limit, in general, just like processed food, junk, any dyes, chemicals, limit that as much as we can, focus on whole nutrient dense food. We can also throw like blood sugar regulation in there, and having dysregulated blood sugar is very stressful on the body, and it takes a lot of work to help manage that. And focusing on nutrition is such a seemingly simple way to support the body through this. And, for us, we really put a big emphasis on protein intake. How can we make sure we are getting protein at every meal, enough protein at every single meal? Starting your meal with your source of protein, then moving on to a vegetable, then moving on to anything else that you're eating. And being very mindful as you're eating. Like all of that can be really supportive too.
Yeah, and it's also pretty common, when you're stressed or tired you naturally want to reach for maybe not the best foods, things that have more sugar in them, more processed foods, because we're looking for that quick like blood sugar spike to keep us awake, to get our energy back, to comfort us. We're all guilty of it. I mean, I do it sometimes too when I'm like super stressed and I didn't sleep enough. It happens. But generally, if you're going in for a bigger procedure like this, that is something to be mindful of, trying to, cut out some of the processed stuff. If you want something sweet, even trying to substitute it with just a more natural option like fruit or whatever it may be. But yeah, the nutrition piece is pretty basic for the most part and also very, very supportive on the body. And then when we talk about supplements here, so we have a protocol that we like to use, and this is going to be a little bit different depending on if you've taken some of these products before or not. So typically for a surgery protocol, we like to use a handful of products from Cellcore. I'll go through it and then we'll tell you what to do if you have not taken any of these before. So we want some kind of binder. So we like the HMET binder, which is heavy metals and environmental toxins. You know, we see great success with that one. The next supplement is called BCATP, and that's really just to give your body, your cells, a boost of energy to try and get through this short-term period of stress that you're going through. The other three things, we'll say, if you have trouble going to the bathroom, maybe you lean more towards constipation, or maybe you need to take some type of medication, painkillers that kind of messes with going to the bathroom regularly, there is a supplement called Bowel Mover that we really like from Cellcore. There's a couple other supplements too. And then for liver support, Tudca, we love that one. And then in general, getting some minerals in. There's tons of different mineral supplements out there, but definitely making sure we're getting some extra mineral support in is a really good idea.
Yeah. And the mineral support, really we think we really look at cellular health. And so how can we support the cells in the body and help, because that's the basis of healing is, cellular healing. And so when we think about, making sure the cells have enough nutrients, and that they're supported, and minerals play a big role in that. So Cellcore does have a product called CT Minerals, that is quite good. Once again, there are a lot of other options out there as well. Trace Minerals has some good mineral, supplements too. And then, the constipation thing, and this might come before and or after, especially with, we just did an episode all about antibiotics. We talked about, that could be constipating there. Definitely pain meds can be very constipating. And oftentimes our eating schedules, depending on the extent of the surgery, can be really thrown off, which can throw off our bowel movements here too. And I'll also say, by and large, hospital food. And by the way, I get this feedback from nurses all the time of hospital food is not the cleanest or necessarily the most nutrient dense, just to put it very nicely. So you may get a little constipated if you have to stay in the hospital for a few days and are largely eating that type of food. There's a lot of supplements to support bowel movements and moving the bowel. I'll say that I've never seen a product like Bowel Mover. And just as someone who was constipated for the vast over half of my life, that was a real game changer for me. And I tried just about everything under the sun to try and get bowel movements to really go. And once again, it was a symptom of other things going on. And it's also really important that we are consistently having bowel movements to expel those toxins that we're being exposed to. So real game changer with the Bowel Mover. I also really like it because you can, low dose it with, one a day, one every couple days, and high dose it. I've had to, temporarily put people on anywhere between 6 to 10 capsules a day. Certainly we do not start there. And it is also safe to do that. So, that's a big bonus around that product. It is senna, but it is also not just senna. It has a variety of different herbs in there. So that can be super, super, super helpful.
Yeah, very important to keep the bowels moving because we want to make sure we're expelling any toxins that are coming from the surgery, the medication, whatever we have to take. And we do recommend that if you're going to do a protocol like this or take these products, that you stop it 3 days prior to the surgery. It kind of depends on what you're having done as far as the timing of it, but I have had people either the day of the surgery or after at least take a binder to start to bind up some of those toxins. Again, it just depends on what type of surgery you're having done. But realistically, we would suggest taking these things for a week or two after the actual surgery is complete. And if you have not taken any of these products before, then we suggest probably a month and a half, 2 months ahead of time, starting with some basic supplements from Cellcore, like the BCATP. There's one called KL support, which just stands for kidney and liver support, a lot of it more gentle than Tudca. And then there's a more basic binder called Viridchem that, again, is just not as potent as the HMET. Not everyone can tolerate that right off the bat. So that's why we suggest starting with some of these products first, like a month in advance, getting your body used to it, opening up your drainage pathways even more, which is not going to be harmful. If anything, that's going to be even better for your body. And then moving into some of these stronger supplements.
Yeah. And, let's say you have done a decent amount of work preparation, like if one of us were to go into surgery, we'd probably start this maybe 2 weeks or so, like a week and a half, 2 weeks, kind of before we would go into a surgery, just because we do have quite a bit of experience with these products, and just supporting our body overall through kind of deeper and bigger healing type work. So if this is not kind of new work for you, like a week and a half, 1 to 2 weeks is probably a good time frame to kind of make sure your body's supported going into this. And then you can start, and definitely ask your surgeon, ask your physicians, like how, when did they want you to stop any supplements? Also recognize that they will probably not know what these things are or understand what they're actually doing. So, just like don't try not to get too frustrated because this is not what they're trained in. But usually they'll give you a recommendation of like, hey, stop supplements the day of or several days beforehand, and it's okay to start them a day, several days, a week afterwards. So this is where like it can be helpful to ask, but also understanding some of their limitations when just like some of their limitations when it comes to all of this type of work. The other thing I do really like, so if you do have to have a lot of the like imaging type work done, think like MRIs, CTs, that kind of stuff, Viridchem is another really good one to incorporate, because that is going to help start to filter out and protect the body from some of the side effects that, once again, we may not externally feel these, but these are stressors inside the body. So that is another one that can be, depending on who you are, what kind of surgery, like what kind of prep work and testing and all that kind of stuff was done, like that can also be helpful.
Yes. And then in general, just a little side note here, we always recommend like any supplements that you're taking, take them at least an hour away from all prescription medications. And that might be, if you feel more comfortable, definitely ask your doctor about it. But as like a general rule of thumb, these aren't things that we want to be taking like one after another with medication. At least space it out an hour apart.
Yeah, that's a great note here. The other thing, like when you go into surgery, a lot of people will need antibiotics. And this is a case where maybe, once again, like ask your doctor if this is an option. It may not be, which is fine. And if it is, I think it's a worthwhile question to ask of, can you just get IV antibiotics throughout the surgery? Or do you need antibiotics afterwards too? Like, is there an option to do one or just the antibiotics during the surgery? Does it have to be afterwards as well? So here's another question to ask, like, and this is obviously once again like going to vary super person to person and like surgery to surgery, but for some people and some surgeries, IV antibiotics during the surgery are an option as like the only measure versus like IV antibiotics and antibiotics post-care. And so I think it's a worthwhile question to ask of like, hey, are you able to do just the IV antibiotics during the surgery? And or do I absolutely have to take the antibiotics post-surgery? Which, once again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is largely just going to depend on the person, on the surgery, and everything like that. But it can be just a little easier on the body if that is an option for you. So once again, just like a worthwhile question to ask.
Yeah, definitely. And then in regards to post-surgery, typically one of the things that we recommend doing is, again, it depends on what type of surgery you're having. Are you taking antibiotics or not? But we do typically recommend adding in some sort of probiotic just to help rebuild the gut again after you've had surgery done. We also, adding in HCl support to rebuild your stomach acid, just because it naturally gets depleted when we're under any kind of stress, and surgery is certainly a stressor to the body. Continuing with the bowel support, taking a general multivitamin, the minerals, those are all really great things to do even after you've had surgery done. And certainly if you did have antibiotics as part of your protocol, I would recommend taking at least a month's work, like one bottle of probiotics, in making sure that you're getting some prebiotic, either foods or a prebiotic supplement in there with that, to make sure the probiotics have something to bind to, because that's super important.
Yeah, and if you missed our antibiotic episode, one of the ones that we really like kind of post antibiotic use is one that is specifically designed for this from Microbiome Labs, called Restore Flora PD. And it, once again, it is specifically designed for post antibiotic use. And so that's a really valuable one. And once again, just ask your physician, ask your surgeon, at what point can I start taking some of these supplements again? And for some people it might be immediately after, for some people it might be 3 to 7 days after. So once again, just worthwhile questions to ask as you're going through this. And, from a length of time standpoint for post-op care and support in the body, I do think at least 2 weeks is probably for more minor surgeries pretty good. It's especially if you are going under general anesthesia, at least 2 weeks. Probably say a month, 4 to 6 weeks is probably even better, especially if it was a decent kind of procedure that you were getting done, and you did go under general anesthesia. If you have to take pain meds, even, keep in mind too, even over the counter pain meds, any NSAIDs, Tylenol, things like that. I mean, that's an extra stress on the liver. The liver has to process that out. For some of those, there can be extra pressure put on the stomach too. So just things to think about, and in which case, this is where additional liver support, additional binding support, the multivitamin, the multimineral, any sort of liver supporting activities, the mindfulness stuff, just reducing stress inside and outside of the body. All of that can play such a big role, and definitely the stomach acid support is another really, really big one, because anytime we are stressed, our stomach acid is naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can even, there is a ton of decent HCl supplements out there, but sometimes we could do, if you don't want to add another supplement in, you can certainly do apple cider vinegar mixed with a little bit of water, and either take it mid-meal, before a meal, kind of whatever works for you. But yeah, all of those before and after, with the liver support, the nutrition support, the supplements we spoke about. And then the other big thing is sleep support. And I would say this goes before surgery and after surgery as well. If you're someone who already has trouble sleeping, or the surgery is making you stressed out and you can't sleep, sometimes adding in additional sleep support is a good idea as well. We really love, well, let me back up. In addition to kind of the nervous system regulation that we talked about, sometimes doing a shorter mindfulness activity at night can actually help us sleep a little bit better, because we're just naturally lowering our stress by doing that. So you can start with trying something like that. And then for more the supplement route, Cortisol Manager by Integrative Therapeutics is a really great one to help with sleep. If you know that ashwagandha doesn't affect you, and sometimes it can make people a little bit more active, give you some energy. And then the most other people I've seen, it can be more relaxing and therapeutic. So if you know that it affects you in the more relaxing way, that's certainly something that you can take at night. There's a sleep blend of CBD by Hello Ned that we really like. That's another great one for sleep support. And there's simpler stuff too, valerian tea, chamomile tea. You could also try something like that. But really just making sure you're getting good quality sleep is huge, because that's going to make sure your body can heal properly. It's a big part of that.
Yeah. And I, since we're talking about sleep, I'd say like other adrenal support, especially if like, leading up. But I'd say for most people leading up to a surgery, it's going to be on the more stressful side. And then like, what does care look like, especially if you have a lot of limitations post-surgery? I mean, that can be very, very stressful. And so, doing a little bit of adrenal support in the nervous system goes a long way. The vitamins and minerals go a really long way here. This also may be a time to think about, like an adrenal cocktail, something like that, ashwagandha, any other like adaptogenic type things. Rhodiola for some people can be really beneficial. So there are a lot of options here, but that's just like another thing to kind of generally think about, is just like the adrenals and how the stress is impacting the body and supporting the adrenals, which play a big role in our body's stress response.
Yeah, and in general, we want to continue to focus on managing stress like throughout this entire process across the board. So whether that looks like a meditation practice for you, journaling, whatever, to making sure you have like friends and family to talk to about what's coming up for you, just something to help manage your stress is going to help your body heal probably more quickly, and it's going to help you feel better. And also, I know I mentioned CBD for sleep, but they do make regular, just plain old CBD that's great for your body, great with stress, inflammation support. So all around, CBD can be one of those great products just to help with both of those things. Same thing with some of the nutrition stuff, like avoiding more processed and packaged foods, things that have chemicals and dyes in them. Those cause a little bit more stress on your body. Alcohol is a big one. I mean, certainly if you're already taking medication, that's hard on your liver. We definitely don't want to add something like alcohol in. That's just going to make it even more difficult for your liver to process some of this stuff out. It's going to make it more difficult for your body to heal. And I know that that's a big one for a lot of people because we use it as like a coping mechanism. We reach for it easily, but if you're trying to heal properly, that would be something that I would consider cutting out for a little while.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing about CBD can help with pain. I really first started using like a full spectrum, really. And when we talk about CBD, I don't recommend a pure CBD type of oil. It's really like a full spectrum hemp oil that has minimal to none of the THC products. Not that I do see a lot of benefit in THC, but I also know that's not everyone's jam, and it's not legal everywhere. So, keeping that in mind. And, for me, like when I started feeling that pain in one of my legs after my accident, there was a lot of pain that came with that, like a lot of like sciatic type pain. And Hello Ned's full spectrum hemp oil, just like their really plain and basic one, was the 10th product I had tried, and it was the one that moved the needle for me. And that is the only one that really helped that pain go away. And I had tried all of the meds too. So many people are put on gabapentin. Gabapentin did literally nothing for me. Opioids were not on the table for me, just my history of family history of addiction. And so that can be a good alternative. Not saying it's not going to work the same as like an oxycodone or something like that for pain management. No. And it can also be very supportive, and obviously is not nearly as hard or has the same side effects. Because it's naturally working with your body.
Yes, yeah. I use that same CBD. There used to be another brand that I really liked that worked great for my body, but they went out of business. And Megan had suggested the Hello Ned one to me, and I love that one. It's my go-to for just like when I'm feeling stressed, if I have any like pain or inflammation in my body, headaches. That's like my favorite product to use. And then there is also another supplement called, I always forget the name. I think it's BioAlloy, but from Biotics, that can be used as like an aspirin, a different version of aspirin. It's actually called white willow bark, and it just has the same natural anti-inflammatory properties in the body. So if you were looking for like an aspirin natural alternative, that would be the product that you could try and use.
Yeah, and going off of that too, if we think about like something to help with inflammation, and this is pretty across the board, just doesn't apply to just like surgical procedures, but a proteolytic enzyme taken on empty is really good for inflammation. So if you have, if you're going in, you've got a lot of inflammation, coming out, you have a lot of inflammation, if you have an acute injury, if you like, twist the wrong way and hurt your back or like bump your shoulder, and have like a temporary, like an acute inflammatory response. A proteolytic enzyme, the one that we really like is also from Biotics. It's called Intenzyme Forte. Super good. And you can do, there's a lot of ways to dose this. Usually the way, especially for like an acute situation, we can high dose it for like 3 to 5 days. Taken on empty. It acts as a digestive enzyme if you take it with food. So it does need to be taken away from food. But it'll just like, it basically like eats away at some of the inflammation. So it can be really, really helpful, in helping just reduce that inflammation naturally.
Yeah, all three of those options are really great things to honestly just like have on hand all the time, just for life in general. But yeah, you can certainly use them for the post surgery as well. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention on nutrition really quick, if you're having any type of, maybe like dental work done, root canal, something that is going to change the foods that you have to eat, try your best to still get some nutritious foods in, something with like protein. Bone broth can be really good here if we have to eat like soft foods or only liquids, just because you're going to get a lot of nutrients with that. Protein shakes are a really good option. Again, given whatever you have going on, maybe avoiding things with like seeds in them, but just making sure we can get in some actual nutrition to support our body, like something with protein, something with high nutrients is going to be a really great idea.
Yeah, the bone broth is really great. It helps with collagen. It's very high in all kinds of really good nutrients, and it's got, the high level of collagen, which can really help with repair within the body too. So yeah, that's really beneficial. Protein powders, if you can make your own protein shakes, better than literally any of the ones that you can find on the market, because they're real hit or miss. If you can do we do like Organifi's plant-based protein, they have a pretty good one. My favorite is a beef protein isolate. Really like the one from Whip. That's the one I use the most. Their unflavored one, it literally has no flavor. I put it in, I'm not a big smoothie person, but I am a big yogurt person. Love putting that in yogurt, love cooking with it. If you want some comfort food, like making your own sweets, like I'm getting ready to make banana bread tomorrow. So, I like to put a scoop or two of protein powder in that, in pancakes. There's a lot of ways that you can use and cook with protein powder too. So that may be another way to get in some more comfort food and easier food to eat, while also making sure that you are getting that protein in, because protein is going to be the most nutrient dense food, and usually some of the hardest to get in, especially post surgery.
Yeah, I love the Equip brand. That's actually the one I use too. If you're someone who can tolerate dairy, like a whey protein, a grass-fed whey protein, that's also a really good idea. Dairy and I. Outside of cheese, I do okay with some cheeses, and sometimes it's more emotional than it is physical with the cheese piece. But yeah, by and large, my body does not do great with whey or milk or things like that. The other thing, and my partner and I were just talking about this too, but Fairlife. Fairlife has like a higher base protein milk. Some of it is lactose free, some of it's not. But it's less processed. Not saying it's the best, and it is a little less processed. So that can be another good option. If you can add it to smoothies, you could drink it by itself, and it is largely higher in protein. So that may be another kind of option of something else to throw in. Yeah, are you talking about like the A2 version, or is this something different?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. You know, I'm the same way. Haven't had cow's milk. I do eat sheep's milk and goat's milk products fairly regularly, but yeah, I've heard that can be an option for people who maybe don't do super well with dairy.
Yeah. I've had quite a few clients try it and with a lot of success. I got diagnosed lactose intolerant in elementary school, so and I have literally no even memories of drinking milk or having like real ice cream. So it's just not appealing to me. I've always been dairy free outside of, some cheeses I've always done okay with or put up with the side effects.
Yeah.
So that is just another option. I've never tried it, but I've heard great feedback from clients who have. So yeah, I think
Awesome.
the name of the game here, going into surgery, coming out of surgery is like liver support and just overall stress support. How can we make sure our liver is super supported, and then how can we just manage stress inside and outside of the body the best we can during this time?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like those are like the real basics. Can we put this protocol in the show notes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that just so you guys can see it. But yeah, those are the basics here of prepping before surgery, after surgery. Anything else that you wanted to add?
I think that is it. Yeah, I think those are really good highlighted points. I will say, when we are working with a client and they are going into surgery, we do customize these protocols. And the protocol does not look the same for every person. So please keep that in mind. We will put a general protocol in the show notes here, and a link to be able to access the Cellcore products. But do keep in mind that this is a very general protocol, and we do often, depending on who are we working with, like, what's the state of their body? What kind of surgery are they having? Like, what's the extent of the surgery? Like, all that kind of stuff plays a really big role in how we're prepping and post-care. Like, what all does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll put like probably the starting doses, the lightest dose, because that's what we feel the most safe sharing with the general population.
Yeah. Yeah. Because these products are strong. Also, once again, if you are new to these, start one at a time. Don't start all of them together. Starting with the binder is usually the safest option. And then adding in some sort of the liver support, and then adding in the mitochondrial support is often, not always, but often how we will kind of structure this for clients that we're working with. So if you are if you're brand new to this and you're just going to start on this, adding in one at a time has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, definitely. And then if you are using something like the Bowel Mover within this, that one, not as huge of a deal. So you can kind of add that one in whenever, but definitely follow that order for the rest of them.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So that's a little insight into surgeries here, pre and post care. And if you have any questions about this, obviously you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Schedule a free consult. You can reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. Email us, info@trifectacollective.net. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. If it resonates, any 5-star reviews mean the world to us. Like, subscribe, follow. We come out with a new episode every single week. We have not missed a week yet. So be sure to tune in, and thank you for joining. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.